Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So today I'm going to show you another crazy game from the Chess Olympiad 2018 played in Batumi, Georgia. This time it was from a match played between Georgia, so the home guys, and Lithuania. So we have the matchup on the first board between Jobava Baadur. Probably some of you even know him. I think he was 1 year a European champion. And on the other hand, we also have a Lithuanian grandmaster, Sarunas Sulskis. So without further ado, let me just show you this crazy game. Jobava starts with b3. b3 is in his repertoire. It is something that I don't really cover, maybe on occasion here on this channel, so it is kind of a nice refreshment to see a game that actually started like this. But immediately from the first move here, Sulskis says that he doesn't want to go into any preparation and he plays a5. So immediately on the first move we have something wild on the board played in an Olympiad, so a very important competition between two grandmasters. So we are not talking about amateurs, these two guys are really handing it out to each other. And okay, so now after a5 we see a4 from Jobava, and now e5 like nothing happened. a5, a4 haven't been played. Now they are going to go into some sort of, let's say, main variation of the b3, also known as Nimzo-Larsen attack. Bishop to b2 attacking the pawn, d6, and now we have e3. g6, so here Sulskis also wants to develop the bishop on this diagonal, which is a very nice idea that I also like to use in my games. So if your opponent develops and if you are able to actually counter that bishop, why not do it? I mean, it is okay to challenge the bishop, which in hand can become a very strong piece here. So d4 immediately strike at the center and bishop to g7 defending on e5. Pawn captures on e5 and now first knight to d7. So attacking the pawn here. And one thing you should know is that capturing here, of course, isn't a good idea because of you losing the bishop. Now you're defending your rook. You don't want to lose any more material. The bishop goes back, and if you capture the pawn, in this situation, black has a piece, even though he has two less pawns. But this situation with this bishop, as I've said, fianchetto bishop is a very strong piece if you don't have your own bishop to challenge it or some other piece to lock it in. So having this situation, definitely don't go for it with white pieces first. Here, Jobava, of course, played knight to c3 to lock. And now you can capture, but first we see knight to e5, everything is back to normal. Queen to d2, and now knight to f6. Queenside castle, kingside castle. So what I forgot to mention at the start, probably Sulskis, I'm just thinking like of possible things that gone through his head while in preparation, thought that here Jobava is playing b3 and he likes to go queenside castle. So to challenge him, I'm going to go immediately with the a5 move, and this time maybe I will disrupt him of his usual idea. But Jobava goes to castle queenside and he is actually not afraid. So after kingside castle, he also starts with a pawn push of his own, first playing h3, and now we have knight from e to d7. So an interesting move. Here he wants to transfer the knight on c5, where he will be closer, still sort of in the center, but closer to the attack on the queen side. He doesn't want to play bishop to e6, while it was perfectly possible and yeah, actually a good move. He doesn't have to be afraid of something like knight to f3 because he can simply capture, and this is a very good game. He can always play the other knight from d7 to c5. But okay, he goes with this idea, knight from e to d7, and we see g4. So Jobava also goes immediately with a push. Knight to c5, and we have bishop to g2. So now developing the other bishop to g2 to slicing on this diagonal. These bishops are becoming very, very strong. Bishop to e6. So as I've said, I don't know why Sulskis didn't play first bishop to e6 and then this maneuver with the knight, but this is, I guess, also fine. We have king to b1, always a good move to put the king when queenside castling on b1, and now once again a surprise b5, a strike on the defenses on the queen side, and the fun is just getting started. So I cannot. So this move is actually probably the move which moved me towards this game and got me more interested. And why am I actually showing this game in the end? But of course, we see a lot of tactics later on. But we know that after seeing a move such as b5, this game is going to have some fireworks in it. So the first question is, of course, what happens if bishop captures on a8, simply capturing the rook? Queen captures on a8, and now your own rook is attacked, and if you are going for your opponent's rook, you definitely want to defend your material, so you play rook to h2, and here pawn captures on a4. If you capture the pawn, then simply you're losing the game in a great style, because first knight comes on e4, attacking the queen and the knight. Knight has to capture, knight captures, and the queen has to move. After this, rook comes on b8, and there is no way for you to defend here on b2. You would have to put the queen on b5 or something like that, but this is just, yeah, playing it very bad. Having that kind of material and being under attack, white is definitely losing this game. Here, if you don't go for this pawn, if you play something like knight from g to e2, then simply the pawn capture continues. You can capture even on c2. The b file will be left open. You will capture with the knight or with the bishop. Doesn't really matter. This situation is great for black. So an amazing sacrifice with b5, and of course Jobava doesn't go for it. He plays g5 first. We see a knight from f to d7, still keeping the options open, and now knight to b5. Rook to b, so first, okay, sorry, bishop captures on b2, king captures, and now rook to b8. The king is on the b file. The only things that are preventing it are the knight and the pawn. And now black will try to take, definitely try to do something about this and try to disrupt the knight and the pawn here and try to open up the b file and continue with the attack. Here, white probably should have played something like h4, f4, h5, continue with his own pawn push, but here first Jobava developed the piece which allowed queen to g5. So capturing the pawn and now equalizing in material, while on the other hand having an upper hand in the attack. Knight to f4, defending the bishop and also attacking the bishop, and knight to b6. Now the two knights attacking on a4. Queen to d4 defending, but Sulskis ignores and he goes for another sacrifice. Knight from c captures on a4. Pawn captures on a4 and another knight captures on a4. So giving up two knights for these two pawns, opening up the king and just wreaking havoc in white's camp. Here in this situation, actually c5 was a possibility, maybe bringing a better game, but then you would have to enter into a play where you have to play with the pawns and strike in even more with the pawns, and this isn't something that you would want to do. It unnecessarily complicates things. So Sulskis goes for knight to a4, queen captures on a4, and rook captures on b5 with check. King has to move, and now rook to b4. The queen is attacked. This pawn is defended by the queen, so you have to move it. Queen to c6 was played, and this was the best move. If you don't play queen to c6, queen to a3 for example, rook captures on f4, pawn captures, and queen captures on g2. So another rook sacrifice, queen captures here. The material isn't equal, but you look at the pawns and the setup for white, and this file is being opened. Black is definitely in a better position. So here queen to c6 was played, but Sulskis once again doesn't care. He just simply sacrifices another piece. Rook captures on f4, pawn captures, and now he cannot capture the bishop, of course, but he captures the pawn. Queen to f4 check. Rook to d2 and rook to b8. The b file is wide open. It is here for the taking. Bishop to a2 is an idea with rook to b1 checkmate. White is a whole rook up, but once again he is one that is defending himself almost throughout the whole game. Queen to c3. So bringing the queen closer to the defenses, and bishop to a2. Now threatening rook to b1 checkmate. So king has to go to d1 and bishop to c4. Not allowing the king to escape. Still threatening now rook to b1 checkmate. Here, queen to a1, of course, white could have gone for king to c1, king to d1, and it doesn't seem like black does have something else. He is in for a perpetual and definitely can have a draw. But if he would go to complicate somehow even more, maybe he would get something, but here it doesn't seem too much. So, queen to a1 stopping rook to b1, and now queen to g5. An excellent move. now attacking the bishop here, and f4 being played. f4 played, just sacrificing the pawn, and the rook is now defending here the bishop. If you capture the pawn, then rook to, maybe even rook to f1, not really sure, actually no, rook to e1, sorry, bishop would capture. But here Sulskis once again finds an excellent tactic, and once again the best move in the position, which is queen to f6, simply sacrificing the queen for checkmate, which is rook to b1 once again. So you cannot play this, and c3 was played. Here if you capture the queen, the same idea doesn't apply because the king has the flight square here on c2. So instead of that, queen to f5 is being played because now rook to b1 can be played, and king to c1 defending it. Bishop to d3 and rook to b2, because otherwise rook to b1 is coming, you're losing the queen and the attack is still underway. Queen to f4, check. King goes to d3 and bishop to b5, blocking the rook attack to the rook. Rook to d2, bring the rook closer to the defense, and now queen to f5 back, still eyeing the b1 square. Rook to e1, finally including the other rook into the game, and now bishop to d3 with the same idea. Rook to b2, blocking it, and bishop to b5. Bishop to e4. Once again, Jobava had a chance to go for a perpetual, but he didn't. So I guess that is like that thought in the back of your head. I'm up in a material, so I'm up a whole rook. If I manage to survive this attack, then I'm definitely going to win this game. And that is definitely the case here, because black is giving all sorts of shots, but if he makes just one little mistake and he allows white to defend, then he is going to lose this game. On the other hand, if white misses something out, then he will be the one to lose this game. But okay, Sulskis continues with the material grab. He captures another pawn on h3, and if you capture all the pawns, then maybe you can survive the whole rook advantage. So here, queen to a5, Jobava finally takes a pawn of his own. So now you can see 5 against 1, but there is a whole rook. So still a lot to be played. The main important thing is that black king is definitely much safer from the white king, and this is a card that black has been playing the whole game. Queen to g4 check. King simply moves to c2, and now queen to g5. Playing queen to g5, defending the bishop 2 times because it was attacked 2 times by the queen and the rook. Rook to a2, and now d5. Once again, complicating things and trying to get something out of it. Because now if you play bishop to d3, bishop can capture and the rook is slicing on the b file. You can give checks with the queen. Yeah, black is maybe in for some surprises for white, but here once again Jobava doesn't go for it. He grabs another pawn. Queen captures on c7 and rook to e8. Once again, the best move in the position, pins the bishop from the rook because the rook on e1 will be definitely captured. One thing you gotta have in mind that bishop to d5 doesn't work here, threatening queen to f7 because of queen to f5 check. And here, whatever you do, so if you, for example, move the king closer to the rook, then queen to f2, rook to e1 will be checkmate. If you move it away still, if you move it to the first rank, then once again, checkmating ideas. If you go to b3, then queen captures on d5. And yeah, you will lose the rook and everything is lost for white here. So you cannot capture here on d5, and here a rook to a7 was played, attacking the f7 square the other way. Queen to f6 defending, and now queen to c5 attacking the bishop and the pawn. Bishop to c4 defending the bishop and the pawn, and now rook to c7, which was the final mistake that Jobava made. So he missed an opportunity to a couple of times going for perpetual, and he definitely wanted to win this game. He played here rook to c7, probably with an idea of rook to c8, but now here Sulskis once again shows that he is definitely a master in tactics and plays queen to h4, the best move in the position. And here you have a couple of options. The bishop to d5 was played in the game, and the other thing you have to know that your rook is attacked now. So if you move the rook here on this file, you can move it, for example, to e3. Queen to f2 is coming, and now you cannot come on the third rank, so you have to go back. King, for example, on c1, queen to f1, king goes back to c2, and now bishop to b3. The whole idea is to move the king closer to the b file, and after this capture now the rook is coming and you are just going for a checkmate. King to a2, queen gives a check, king comes here, and after a couple of checks you are actually checkmating white, and whenever white plays he is getting checkmated. So it wouldn't be too hard to find for a grandmaster and a tactician such as Sulskis, and Jobava definitely didn't go this road. One other thing that I wanted to show you, if you kind of stay on this line, then once again queen to e4 comes with check, and you can see that this position is definitely winning for black. So bishop to d5 was played, but now actually this is also one of the worst moves, which leads to a checkmate in 5. Queen to h2 was played, and here in the game king to d1 was played, but Jobava actually immediately resigned the game, because here in this position, once again, the bishop is slicing these two squares and you have to go back. If you go to c1 or b1, then rook to e1 is an immediate checkmate, and if you go on d1, then rook to e1, king to e1, and queen to e2 is checkmate. Sulskis wins this amazing game after so many tactics and so many sacrifices. So I really enjoyed this game. I hope you did too. If I definitely see that the Chess Olympiad of 2018 brings a whole lot of good games. So you if you stumble upon some, or if you already seen some amazing games and you want me to check it out, definitely suggest them in the comments down below. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and this game, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.